You didn't choose to become angrier, but infinite feeds quietly turn your rage into repeatable habits that feel personal. Tomorrow, you'll swear you're just reacting while the algorithm nudges you to do it again, deeper and longer, till you can't tell the difference between what you want and what your scrolling is training. Feeds do not just show you content. They can shape the emotions that make you keep scrolling. In 2014, researchers led by Kramer on Facebook reported that changing what news people saw shifted what they posted, and it did so on a large scale. The key detail is how quickly emotion followed exposure. You can think of it like turning a dimmer switch, then watching your own mood react. Notice how the study used changes to what people read, and then measured changes in what they wrote. That is the first hinge. An infinite feed can treat your feelings as a signal, not as a human experience. Rage, fear, and outrage are strong ego states, so engagement rises when the feed learns which posts light up your attention. Once the feed recognizes your spike, it can keep serving close matches. Your next reaction feels like a choice, but it is often the latest response inside a loop that is already learning. A habit can form without anyone teaching you a rule. B.F. Skinner showed this with pigeons and rats using a variable ratio reward schedule, which means rewards arrive after an unpredictable number of actions. The brain treats uncertainty like a heat source. When you are not sure whether the next tap will pay off, your effort stays up. Track how the mechanism makes you keep trying even when rewards come rarely. Infinite feeds borrow that uncertainty. You never know which clip will hit, which headline will enrage, or which comment will validate your side, so you keep acting. When the reward is not food but attention and status, the pattern still locks in. Your habit becomes less about a goal and more about chasing the next unpredictable emotional hit. Habits depend on timing, not just motivation. In 2009, behavior scientist Fogg described captology, where technology changes behavior by pairing a trigger with a moment of low resistance. Your willpower is strongest when your day is calm. Your resistance drops when you are tired, distracted, or slightly irritated. Consider how a notification badge works like a tiny trigger that appears exactly when you are least guarded. An infinite feed is full of triggers. New posts arrive right after you react. An app nudges you to keep going through autoplay, refresh prompts, and a recommended for you labeling. That timing matters because your brain often uses fast shortcuts. When rage is already activated, it reduces the effort needed to click the next item. Habits can become automatic when context stays stable. In 1998 study work by Bakshy and related habit researchers, including study designs by Aarts and colleagues, showed that people repeat behaviors more when the cue pattern repeats, even if their original plan changes. The everyday version is kitchen behavior. If your phone always lights up at the same corner of your desk, your hand learns that route faster than your intention does. Notice how the grocery setting used repeated cues, so the same act shows up without a fresh decision. Once the cue is stable, the behavior becomes the default motion. Infinite feeds keep the context stable. Your device stays in your hand, the layout stays familiar, and the emotional reward is tied to the same swipe action. When habits take over, self-control stops being the main driver. In 2006, researchers Neal, Wood, and Quinn studied how habitual behavior can persist even when people try to regulate themselves. Your mind can hold a plan on a whiteboard, but working memory erases. Working memory is like a sticky note on a dashboard, and it dries out when the ride gets bumpy. Track how the research framed habit as a process that can overpower a delayed, thoughtful goal. That is exactly what rage does to you. Rage narrows attention and speeds up action, so the feed only has to supply the next cue. So the decision to scroll becomes a drift. The feed turns emotion into a default behavior path, then keeps it running by updating what you see based on what you just did. A feed can shape what you see even when you do not search for it. In 2015, researchers Nathaniel Bakshy, Solomon Messing, and Lad Adamic studied Facebook and found that algorithmic ranking increased exposure to political content, including content beyond what people would choose on their own. That matters because rage rarely starts as a full worldview. Rage often starts as a spark, like a single comment that lands in the perfect mood and then pulls you deeper. Consider how algorithmic ranking can steer you from occasional viewing to repeated exposure. The more often you get content that triggers anger or fear, the more likely a habit loop forms. When the system can predict your engagement, it can treat outrage as a performance. It does not need to make you angry from scratch. It only needs to keep serving the kinds of stories that reliably raise your response. You can see the mechanism in how notification timing changes behavior. Research groups studying smartphone and social app use have linked intermittent alerts with higher checking habits because the brain learns to watch for the next signal. Your attention becomes like a kettle with a lid that keeps rattling. Every small sound makes you check even if you do not need more water. Notice how intermittent cues create repeated micro-decisions. When rage is the emotional background, those micro-decisions become emotional. A quick check turns into a deeper thread, and a deeper thread keeps rage active long enough for engagement to compound. Even if the content itself is not new, the experience refreshes every time you reopen it. The habit forms around the pattern of check, react, and return. Recommendation systems can turn a one-time curiosity into a sustained feed. In 2019, the Wall Street Journal reported on how YouTube's recommendation engine could lead viewers from mainstream videos into more extreme content because watch time and engagement stayed high. Rage fits that reward structure. Outrage keeps viewers watching longer since it creates more to argue about, more to react to, and more reasons to stay. Track how a recommendation loop uses your latest behavior as a map. After you react strongly to a type of content, the system treats that reaction as a routing update. Once that routing repeats, autonomy shrinks. You feel like you are exploring, but the system is steering with a narrow goal: maximize the next engagement signal. The result is not just distraction. It is a habit that runs on your emotion, even when you would rather choose calm.